You know, one of the things I love to fish in the winter is a football jig. And basically what I'm talking about is getting out on big points or structure, creek channel bends, or whatever it is, and finding the most activity I can find, seeing if I can see some fish. But basically you're fishing a bait really slow. You know, when you get in the winter of the year and the water temperature starts to fall, the fish are not going to be nearly as active. They're not going to chase things nearly as well. And the cool thing about a football jig is you can get it out there and you can actually drag it along the bottom. It helps you figure out what's on the bottom. Is there brush there? Is there rock? Right in the base of that tree. Get it here. All right. I caught that on a little finesse jig, 1/2 ounce. Finesse football head. That's a chunk now. That's a chunky fat fish. You know, I had that fish in pretty heavy cover. He's on the outside of a tree, and you know, I'm throwing kind of a small jig. This is a little Strike King football head, and you know, there's some rocks and stuff out there, so I'll drag it a little bit, then I'll pitch it up around a log. I'm not in the real heavy stuff. I've got it with a real sensitive setup. I'm using fluorocarbon line, so the fluorocarbon's a lot more sensitive than anything else I can throw. I've got it on 12-pound test because this is fairly clear water and I don't feel like I'm gonna get them hung up in brush. As far as my rod setup goes, it's a Cabela's XML Bass football jig rod. The football jig rod is made for doing this right here. It's 7 foot 3 inches long. It's got a good backbone in the rod, and then the tip is pretty limber because I don't want just a real stiff tip. And so I can actually drag it along, I can kind of feel what's going on, and it'll give me a lot of bites. You know, a jig really mimics a crawfish, but a lot of times when fish get out on structure, they're feeding on crawfish some of the time, and they'll bite a jig really good. That's a good fish right there. Oh, that's a nice one. Now listen, this is pretty wild right here. I gotta show you what I've been doing. I'm just out in the middle, and what happened is it's not a giant, but it ain't bad. What happened was I started on my side view. I started seeing rocks out, you know, out from the bank, and so, you know, what I decided to do is get out here and just kind of drag a little small football head around out there, and boom, 2.5 pounder. That ain't bad. I want to show you my jig. This is a Strike King tour grade 3/4 ounce football jig, green pumpkin. You know, the key components to this jig is it's got a really good weed guard and it's got a good hook. It's not a giant hook, but it's the size hook you would want for fishing fairly clear water football jig. I've got a Rage Crawl trailer. You can do a lot of different things with your trailer. I like a Rage Crawl the best. Green pumpkin's probably my favorite color. This whole setup will catch you a ton of fish. Get a football jig in your hands when it gets to be the winter, December, January, February, and prepare for action.